Hey everybody, Tyler here. But before I forget, along with Kevin, say hey Kevin.
Hey, everybody.
So this is the first show of many shows this year that's going to be based completely on I have two back in
I'm a soloist, not a soloist.
Four, right?
Yeah, I don't know what you said because that audio really messed up your audio. But anyway, yes, it's 2004. Yeah, so 20 years. Is that what you're talking about?
There you go. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Pretty
Yeah. Hey, so this is the first episode in a series of 20 in a series of 12, one a month for the year that we were deployed 20 years ago in 2004. And this episode, this one's actually going to be a cool one because we have some guys with us who were in the company of National Guardsmen out of New York that were attached to us. And we have not been able to talk to them yet or get their story until today. And so pretty excited about that because they have a completely different, very unique perspective and completely different train up from what we had. And being that they're from New York, I would imagine a little bit of a personal perspective going into it. So let's introduce them. We've got Alvin, right?
Yep.
And George. And go ahead and introduce yourselves. Alvin, go ahead and go first, and then George, and then tell us what you did and what rank you were then and who you are and all that good stuff.
Yeah. My name is Alvin Mesquita. I was a sergeant with at the time with Bravo 1st of the 105th. That was part of the 10th Mountain. Then I was transferred over to 2nd of the 108th, which then deployed to Iraq sometime around October. We started off doing that to deploy to Iraq as we're doing in the show of February. So basically, I was a team leader, and that's pretty much what I did. Actually, the funny thing with me is that when 9/11 happened, I wasn't even in the military. I got out in 98 or so, and after 9/11 happened, I decided to rejoin up again, and I joined up back up again with some of the guys that I knew from back in the days, and that was it. That's pretty much my story.
Okay, and George.
Yeah, so my name is George Rodriguez. I was the company commander for Charlie Company. I was the Alpha Company commander. I got moved to battalion staff, and then there were some shakeups, some issues, and I ended up taking over Charlie Company in November of 2003, and then took me to Iraq. I think what's really interesting about our company is probably a good majority of the company had something to do with 9/11, either before or afterwards. And I would say probably 90% of the company did some type of support mission for 9/11 and the following missions afterwards.
Dang.
So it was a little bit more personal for us, I think.
Oh, I mean, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
Where in New York were y'all living when all that went down? Like there in the city, or?
So I was a Vermont state trooper. So I was living in Vermont, but my companies were in the northeast corner of New York. So Champlain Valley up in the Adirondacks, on the border, which is primarily where the 2nd Battalion of 108th Infantry came from. It was north of the Albany Thruway, so it was the whole northern part of the country. I think Alvin was from the southern part, which was the 105th, which he was saying is first. In order to make a full battalion to send to Iraq, they rolled up the 2nd Battalion, 1st Battalion, and the 105th Infantry all into one to get the soldiers to make up all the 2nd Battalion.
Oh, okay. Right on. So you guys had, I dropped my pen. So you guys had some support missions during 9/11. What, man, like, I don't know, like how much y'all want to get into that.
It's a lot. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah,
I was in New York City at the time.
Yeah, I can briefly go over it. Probably keep Alvin out of it a little bit. He was a lot closer to it because he was down there. There were a bunch of missions that popped off. The first one would have been like Operation Noble Eagle, and there was different iterations. But after the initial attack, New York had a big security mission, and there was an armed mission that a lot of people don't really know about. But they were armed National Guardsmen who were carrying their M4s at the time, carrying them in the all the subways, all the tunnels, the airports, critical sites like the power plants all around New York State. So a lot of us were activated for a few months at a time to go down to New York City and spend time in they're called street missions in the different subways. Some of us were in the airports and some of us were on the bridges and tunnels. So there was a lot of stuff that was going on that I don't think the average person knows about, but there was a really heavy security mindset in New York City at the time. And we were coming from all over New York State.
Yeah, no, I had never heard of any of that stuff. I mean, I kind of assumed, right? Because you think a terrorist attack on a major city in the U.S. and, so Tyree and I were both in basic training at the time. I was about to graduate, and I know that Fort Benning beefed up its security and pulled a bunch of privates in training and made them stand around and with M4s or M16s actually, A2s. But yeah, so you said Operation Noble Eagle. I never even heard of it. So I would imagine a lot of people haven't heard of that. That's something you would think that that they would talk about. That would be, it's part of history for sure. Like the follow-on missions to what happened that day, and what the sentiment was, and everything else of the military folks that were stationed up in that state. That's crazy.
That's the important part about talking about it now. Tell me a little bit about your family lives at this point. I mean, I know you guys have gone through enough as it is being in the military at that point, but except for you, Alvin, I guess jumping back into it, what was your family life during 9/11?
Well, I was a single guy that just worked, and I had kids from previous marriage, and I was just constantly just working and looking after my parents and myself, and just pretty much having a joyful life, partying whenever I could party, and everything was great until 9/11 happened, and then my life got turned upside down, like everybody else's. And I made a choice that I said, well, it is what it is. That's what I signed up for. My oath that never expired, so might as well go back into the grind. And that's exactly what I did, so without hesitation.
Yeah, knowing full well that, hey, this is probably potentially going to lead me into being deployed overseas somewhere. God
Oh,
knows.
I knew that was going to happen. I mean, the second that happened, I was like, yeah, we're going to war. I mean, without a doubt,
Yeah.
we were going to war.
Was there a mindset for you guys like this this revenge mindset, like we need to go get these bastards? And then, I mean, was that on y'all's mind at all?
I mean,
Yeah.
I think in the beginning I would say yeah, but by the time we deployed, it was, but we got activated. It was 2003, so it happened 2 years before, and I think it was maybe more like a justice than a revenge. I think if you're going to put it in a form, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I ain't gonna lie.
I know I had some guys who just they want to pay back. We got a lot of guys bought pieces of New York City with them, buried them in the desert. Had a bunch of different stuff that because it was personal, especially for the units that lived in New York City. I mean, they were right there when that happened, and they got activated. They were right there on the rubble pile. So for them, it's a lot different than for someone who didn't go there until after it was all, the whole situation had changed. So.
Yeah. Was so then with that being said, I mean, whether it be revenge or justice or whichever, now you get word that you're deploying to Iraq, right? Which was, from what we were told, not the country that was responsible for the attacks.
Yeah. Well, I've got a little bit more insight into this. I was when 9/11 happened, I was a Bravo company commander, which was in the really northeast corner of New York. And I was a state trooper in Vermont, and probably about that January, the following January 2002, I became Alpha Company commander. I moved over to Alpha Company, which is a little bit south, but it's still up in the northern part of the state. And at that point, that's when we started doing all these missions. And originally, we were supposed to do a Sinai tour, and I was getting the briefings. I had to go to special meetings a long time. They're like, "Well, we're going to relieve active duty units." There was a Sinai tour that was going on. I'm not sure what unit was doing it, but we were going to take over from them. There was nothing about going to Iraq or anything. There's a lot of rumor, but nothing official. And then probably around April of 2003, we had just finished one of the street missions in New York City. And we got back, we had a meeting, and we got the call that we were activating October 3rd of 2003 to deploy to Iraq. So it was around April timeframe that we got the word that we were deploying. And at that point, then it became, and I always say it was like the NFL draft, where we would go and we'd like, all right, what guys can't deploy? We had, it's the same thing for active duty. You go through, you have your medical and everything, and they're going through, and all the units were going through, and guys were just dropping out. They weren't eligible because found out some guys had, my original battalion commander, he ended up having diabetes, and they said he was non-deployable. So we ended up with a new battalion commander. And it was just like that the whole way through. It was almost like, and then you look at units and you're like, all right, we see this guy here. We want this guy. We want this guy. So it was like it was almost like a draft really of who we wanted. And we were getting the pick of everybody. We were going to be the first really battalion sized element to deploy out of New York since World War II. So it was a big thing for New York.
Right.
Especially for the New York Army National Guard. I mean, I think before that, no one ever thought, guardsmen going into the combat was they're going to do support stuff, but not as an infantry battalion going in to do infantry stuff. So,
and with all that being said, though, so what is as the company commander being selected to go over there or to be in charge of this company, and you're going to deploy? Maybe you don't know. You said you found out in February you're going to be attached to us of 2004, February of 04. But what is your mindset as a company commander, right? Like in terms of readiness and, just what's about to come up and what the training has been like and everything. What's your mindset there?
I mean, I think you got to realize we deployed out of Fort Drum, New York. So we deployed out of a winter Fort Drum with 2 to 3 feet of snow to go to the desert. That was our so it was you knew what was going on. I mean, we were watching the news and we're seeing things happening. I want to say sometime, I don't remember the exact date, probably November timeframe. The fourth ID caught Saddam. And everyone's like, wow, what's December now? That was December. Yeah. So everyone's like, wow, what's going to happen now? All these things. And so there was a lot of things we didn't know. We just knew we were going to Iraq. We didn't know. I know for me, I knew we were being evaluated by different evaluators. We had a lot of first ID guys who were coming and watching us doing our training. And then they started gravitating towards our company more and more. And we started getting, hindsight being 2020, we started getting these really specific missions where we're spending a lot of time in the urban site instead of everyone else doing, patrols and vehicle stuff. And we're walking around doing a lot of movements. And then, I don't know if you want to go into JRTC right now, but we can go into the JRTC, and that was just, I say it was a total cluster, but there was a reason for it. But I don't know if you want to go into that now or not.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so we had JRTC, and they had you had a little fob, and it wasn't a traditional JRTC environment. You had all these different lanes set up for JRTC, and it was basically they were certifying that we were able to go, that we could pass these different metal tasks and get the check mark saying, yeah, you guys are good to go. And one of them was like a convoy lane. You had some meetings with different people, and then you had the Shugard Gordon mount site, which was all built up and everything. And we went there the first day, and it was supposed to be a rotation. You had base defense, you had all these different things that you would do, and you get rotated through. So the first day we hit Shugard Gordon, and it's this cluster. I mean, and it's supposed to be, you get, and it wasn't a traditional JRTC where if you were killed or wounded, you were taken back to the PHA or anything. It was more of you were rekeyed and sent out. But they had ammo stacked up for us, and it was just, we would just keep doing the same thing over and over again from first light until it got dark, and then we'd roll back in. And after about the third day, I went to the battalion commander and I was like, hey, can we share the wealth? Because we haven't left the city in like 3 days. We've got 9 days of this. And, and he's like, it's not my call. He's like, you guys are there until they say you leave. And we spent our whole JRTC rotation going in and out. And we're actually doing things. We did the big, where the payroll got hit. We had that mission. We had all these missions that were going on in Samara, which we didn't know anything about Samara at the time, going on, and they were throwing these scenarios at us and we were reacting to it. And they had me take my battery out of the miles. They're like, yeah, you're not dying, you're just going to keep going and running your guys through this. And that was just, I guess, to see how we would react and everything. And as we continued, it just continued. The scenarios got worse and worse, and sometimes they were like way off the wall type things. But it was, and I think it was just a test. And the last day we had we did our evaluation, and they came in, and then they had myself and the first sergeant stay behind, our battalion S3, our battalion intelligence officer, the XO, and the battalion commander stay behind, and they were doing the mission brief for what the 218th was going to do. And so they go over everything, and then they have, and then they're like, well, Charlie Company, you guys will be breaking off from the 2nd Battalion, and you're going to be attached to the 126. And they're like, you're going to be in Samara, and our intel guy had to get offense information, and I had to get special briefings before then on what was going on Samara. But up until that time, we had no idea like what or where Samara. That was just a place on the map that you didn't know anything about. So that was our basic welcome to the 126. This is where you're going, and we had to keep that quiet until the day we got on the plane. We had a briefing out in Wheeler Sack Airfield in Fort Drum, and we're getting on the plane. That's when I told my guys, hey, here's what we're doing. We're arriving in country. We're going to do our pre-mob in the country in Kuwait. And then when we roll into Iraq, we're heading to Brassfield Mora. And we're going to be living with the 126. We're no longer we're still part of the 218, but we are now part of the 126, and we'll be operating there for our whole tour. And so that was the whole, I guess, surprise ending to our JRTC rotation in February.
Surprise ending and surprise beginning.
Yeah.
Heavy, man. Like welcome to the 126.
Yeah.
What was the overall kind of feedback from that? Like, were people like, who the fuck are the 126? Like, what is up with this? Why are we not being with our guys? Like, what was the
I don't know if there was anything. I don't think really anyone knew, unless you came from an active duty, you didn't really know who the 126 was. It was just another battalion. We were all 10th Mountain guys that were attached to 10th Mountain. I can tell you anything you want to know about the Triple Deuce or anything like that, because that's who we dealt with all the time. But 10th Mountain, we didn't. I mean, first ID. I mean, you see stuff on TV and stuff. But as far as, we knew you guys were mechanized, and we knew you guys had tanks, and that we weren't gonna have none of that. So we were gonna be walking a lot. That's all we knew. But I do have to say is that we were definitely outfitted way better than you guys were. I remember when we showed up, we had the new ACHs, new M4s, all the new issue Molly that came out, and you guys were walking around with the Fritz helmets with, it was just, and who are these guys showing up with all this cool guy gear, and so the stuff still left over from Kosovo,
So I remember the first time I saw you guys, and everybody had brand new M4s, brand new body armor, brand new everything. And we were like, what the hell? Like, and we're an active duty unit. We should be funded well. We're deploying with these A4s that are 40, 30, 20, 30 years old.
Yeah.
So before we deployed, we all had issued to us flak vests, like the old school flak vest for Vietnam. And before we deployed, we had to go to CIF and do a 1-for-1 exchange, and it had to be size for size. Well, my flak vest was a double XL or an XL, one size too big. And so I'm at CIF, and I'm like, hey, I need to exchange this for the 1-for-1 or whatever for the IBA, but I need a size smaller. And she's like, we can't do that. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't do that? Like, CIF, like, of course you can do that. And she's like, no, we have to do rules. one for one. Yeah. And I remember I told this lady, I was like, well, if I'm going to deploy over there with gear that doesn't fit, just be prepared to hear that I died because you wouldn't give me the right thing. I was mad. I was so pissed, but and she just looked at me. She was like, I can't do anything, But
I think part of it too was so we deployed with, I think it was a 30th Brigade out of North Carolina. So we were a battalion as part of the 30th, and the 30th was somewhere else in Iraq. And then the 218th got broken off from the 30th, and then we got broken off from the 218th. But we were getting and I think the big thing that we had so much really good gear was we were getting stuff from the 30th as part of their RIF, and then 10th Mountain was going through an RIF too. So since we were training, and the 30th was training in North Carolina at the old Fort Bragg. We were in Fort Drum, so we got Fort Bragg's RIF, and we got our RIF, and then New York State was giving us all kinds of extra stuff. Like we deployed, and we had one M14 per company. That New York State grabbed all the M14s and the whole state army. They took them all apart, refurbished them with new parts, and they sent them to us with 10x Unitel scopes, and we had I had scout platoon snipers in my platoon. I had it was like all these different things, and we would get all the gear that came with them. So we had all this stuff that just we deployed with a former trauma team. We had a surgeon in our battalion outranked a surgeon in Anaconda. He was a full-bird colonel. We had we had emergency room doctors and stuff that for medics, and so it was crazy some of the stuff that we had. So we had a lot of gear that New York State bought for us, the 30th Brigade got for us, and then Fort Drum gave to us also. So we kind of had the best of both worlds when it came to equipment.
They gave us everything. We even had Halligan tools.
Yeah, we had Halligans.
We had all kinds of
ladders.
Crazy gadgets. We're like, where are the instructions? I don't know. Just figure it out. And I'm like, what? We didn't even figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, instructions, please? No, just figure it out. Some stuff we used, some things we didn't use. We just set them in the Conex boxes because we had no use for it. We had those ladders that we had that the ones that you could put apart, take apart and put back together again. But we had no use for it.
Yeah.
We had these little scopes you could slide into doors and you could look through it. It's great for like a SWAT team. I don't think we had one, we never even used it because we were like, we're just kicking the door in, So, but yeah, we had all this stuff that it was crazy.
Well, that's pretty cool though. I mean, you guys still had it. That's still a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Especially, hey, you guys are going to this place. As soon as you get on the plane, you're going to learn where you're going to go. And now this explains why we have all this extra crazy shit with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
George, what was it like being the person in charge of all this while this was going on? I mean, the eye of the storm right now.
Yeah, so it was hard. I was my oldest son when 9/11 hit was 9 months old, and then in February my youngest son was born, and then so I got to see him before he left. So I had a brand new son, and then I'm deploying with 100. I think I had 138 guys in my company because I had a regular light infantry company, and then I also had I had some extra medics that were thrown in, and I also had a fire support team, which was really like almost a battalion fire support team that went with me. So there was a lot of guys, and I'd only really been with the company since November, end of November, beginning of December. So I was with them for a short period of time, and it's it was a lot of responsibility, and and I was coming in, and and I knew things that they didn't know that I couldn't tell them about, and it was difficult. It was really difficult, and difficult knowing that you're going to a new unit that absolutely no one, and we didn't really know how you guys were going to accept us. Active duty accepting the National Guard. What are you guys how are you guys gonna treat us? What are we gonna get stuck, guarding the porta potties the whole time and doing absolutely nothing, or what's gonna happen? You guys got tanks and Bradleys, and I got some 9.6 turtlebacks with no armor, and what am I gonna do? So it was stressful. It was very stressful.
Man,
there's a lot of parallels here because our group of people that we went with 126 Bravo 126, we had been together for years. We were extremely comfortable with each other. The stop loss and stop movement just had a bunch of us stuck together, except our leadership. Right around the time that we were leaving, we were getting a brand new company commander.
The day we left.
The day we left. So there's a lot of similarities going on here.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I had no clue. Like,
Yeah. I will say that though, you know, and I remember I had a conversation with Captain Rockefeller one time, and he said, "Boy, you have it a lot easier than I do," and it was like he's like my squad leaders have to have formation with my guys all the time to make sure like they go eat and stuff like that. He's like, you don't have to do any of that stuff. I mean, my guys were a lot older. I had a lot of guys who were a lot older, a lot of police officers, a lot of correction officers. I mean, I had guys who were they didn't know that like the army and the military was a side thing, but they had another life that was going on. So they had different responsibilities, and you know, so for in that sense, it was easier, but you know, it was a little bit more difficult because, like I said, we didn't know anybody at the time. We didn't know how we were going to be received.
I will say, yeah, when we found out that like one of our companies was being traded out for you guys, we were like, why would they give us National Guard? Because you like you kind of stated, like there is this if you're on active duty, you know, there's this stigma that the National Guard and the Army Reserve are not worth, you know, a damn, and you know, their operational abilities are just subpar and this and that and the other. And you know, after I left active duty, I went into the reserves, and and I definitely learned to see like, you know, the purpose of it, and that you guys actually do get a fair amount of training, like following up. Like you guys probably got just as much, if not more training. Actually, I would say you guys got more urban training than we did, because our train up, we were going out to Grafenwehr and Hohenfels in Germany and running around in the woods doing Cold War stuff, still chasing bimps, you know, climbing in little like pre-dug foxholes that were already out there from 50 years ago. You know, like we had very little urban training. If it wasn't for some of the dudes that we got that PCS to us from Fort Bragg, specifically like Sergeant Gill, now Sergeant Major Gill, and Sergeant Absher, now Sergeant Major Absher, like those guys, and the Weller brothers, they came to us from 25th ID, but like they had all this like urban training experience, and we didn't have any of it. Like I remember the first time Sergeant Gill was like, okay, we're go ahead and set up a glass house, and all of us were like, what is a glass house? You know what I mean? We had no idea. And he took engineer tape and put it on the ground, and like, okay, this is your room. Like, how is this a room? This is a square on the ground, you know? So we didn't really get a lot of urban training. So really for us, it was definitely kind of trial by fire. Once we got there into Samara and we were running around, like, oh, okay, I get it now. This is why the 4-man stack is a thing, and all that good stuff. But we were apprehensive for sure, because you know the whole stigma about the National Guard and Army Reserve. But I've always said, well, since being in the reserves and learning more about how the reserve and the National Guard works, I've always said that in some cases, and a lot, well, fair amount of cases, I guess, a National Guard unit deploying or an Army Reserve unit deploying is in a lot of ways going to be better than the active duty side, just because of what you stated earlier. You had a lot of guys who were in corrections, law enforcement. Your surgeon was an actual, you know, surgeon in real life. You know, your medics are probably actual EMTs or nurses of some type, or something medical in civilian world where they do that stuff on a day-to-day basis. And those of us on active duty, I mean, that's our job, right? So I was an infantryman by trade, but I drank a lot, I partied a lot, you know what I mean? Like I didn't know anything about, you know, high stress scenarios, something like a cop, or like you said, you were a trooper, like a trooper would know, because, you know, we're not living that life, right? We're just training and then picking cigarette butts up during, you know, area beautification. So like our real world experiences were lacking comparatively. And I think you guys were able to, I mean, you guys definitely showed that like you were there ready to go. And I will say I did feel bad for you guys because of the vehicles that y'all got. Like you said, light skinned Humvees and old 5 tons that had no armor. you guys were instructed to like harden them with sandbags and weld steel on the
Yeah.
side.
And I can tell you the just the different skill set that we brought in. I know we showed up in theater and you guys had, I don't think you guys even had hot showers then. And one of the things was we came in and we're like, how come there's no hot showers? And they're like, well, we don't have, the engineers haven't come in to put in the system yet. We're like, what do they got to do? And I was like, I got like 12 guys who have licenses to run those machines. They were sitting me on the fob. And I was like, and I got one of my platoon sergeants is a project manager. He'll do it. And we threw in a black water system for the showers so we could have showers in like 3 or 4 days. They just jumped in the machines and did it. And we just brought our licenses up. And the other thing, as far as the vehicles go, yeah, we had these light-skinned vehicles, but my platoon sergeant was a master welder, and he had a bunch of guys that were welding, and they went and I don't know what those steel plates were for, but one thing we were good at was stealing stuff, and those plates magically appeared in our vehicles, and they were cutting them out, and they welded them all up, and I had a supply sergeant.
They were acquired.
They were acquired, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a supply sergeant who I don't know, he was Anthony Barksdale. I don't know, this guy knew like every first day in Iraq, he knew everybody, every KBR guy, he knew everything. And the next thing I know is he's like, I need a vehicle a week because they gotta get these up armor kits. I'm like, well, Battalion doesn't say anything. He's like, I just need a vehicle. So I would send him 1 or 2 a day down to Anaconda. And they were coming back with these up armor kits. And we go to a battalion meeting. They're like, oh, we're gonna prioritize you guys and give you guys a couple of up armor kits that are coming in. I was like, my vehicles are all done. Like, what are you talking about? I was like, my supply sergeant got them all done. And I don't remember who the DMO was for you guys, but the battalion commander was like, go see him and get the rest of our vehicles done because I don't know how he's doing it. But we were only supposed to get like two a week or 1 a week, and we had ours done in like 2 weeks, all like 6 or 7 of them. So
Dude, that's a good
so
supply.
We were good at acquiring stuff. Acquiring
that's
stuff.
That's a good supply right there, man. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta say that we had every jack of all trades and master of none in our unit. Guys were building comfortable housing inside their hooches. I mean, everybody was coming up with something, and something to just live just a little bit more comfortable. And that was the great thing about it, that us having side jobs outside of the National Guard, we brought that skill set into being deployed, and it just made life just a little bit more comfortable. Of course, until they kicked us out of the FOB and sent us out to stay in the city. But it is what it is. I mean,
well, that's why we went to casino, was to fix casino up. Casino,
and we made that
no ACs
too.
running.
Casino,
we got the ACs
Razor,
going
inside the city. It didn't matter where we went. We were comfortable. Just a little bit.
Yeah. So here's an interesting story. So when we first got there, we were getting hit by rockets a lot. It was like over and over rockets, and I had my FSO was Sergeant First Class Reinhardt, and so he's out, like these rockets would hit, and he's out there measuring stuff and everything. And I don't remember who your FSO was for the battalion. He's like, "What's he doing?" I'm like, "Hey, he's doing his thing, whatever. He's out there doing his stuff." So he comes and he does a briefing. And he briefs that based on the angles and everything else and the trajectories and everything, that these rockets are being fired from a fixed position, and based on the height, it's going to be one of the bongo trucks. And they're like all laughing at him. And the FSO was like, "What are you, a rocket scientist?" And he's like, "Well, actually, I am." That's what he did in the civilian side. He's a rocket scientist. And like shortly after that, like a couple of days later, they had a UAV flying over and watched this bongo truck with a fixed tube firing rockets into the FOB and everything. He was like, "I told you so." And that was it. That was the thing that was different. Like, we had guys who, he was a rocket scientist. He knew exactly what he was doing.
Dude, that is hilarious. Yeah. But that's kind of what I'm saying, right? So like the National Guard, the Army Reserve, like whenever they deploy places, like they bring these, you have 138 guys in a company, you have 138 different skill sets. You have all of those years of real world experience. And, by the time we deployed, I was in the Army for 2.5 years, and I drank a lot. We went to the field. You know what I mean? Like that was our life. We didn't really have those skill sets. Like, I mean, so that is definitely one way. Like, I think that the National Guard and Reserve like definitely outdo active duty when it comes to deployments and stuff. And it took me being in the Reserve to learn that. Oh yeah. But like on top of everything else. Yeah. That's funny though. What's he an actual? What is he with rocket science?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Well,
funny.
that's fucking awesome, man. I mean, I didn't really think about that at all until like we are just having this conversation just now about it. Like we were a bunch of teenagers, if that. I mean, not if that, just maybe a couple of us over 21. We were all really young, and you guys really did have all the experience. And we were thinking, like, you guys, they don't know what they're going to be doing over there. The whole time, you guys were getting better training, had better equipment. Like, yeah, we could have swapped spots, and it would have been an issue. I don't think. Like, I'm glad that you guys had the training you guys had because, like, as we can see going in, it wasn't an easy. It wasn't an easy deployment from the start. It was a little bit different. But I guess we can't get that deep into that yet, can we?
I mean, we can do whatever we want,
Yeah.
but I will say though, like once the fighting started,
Hmm.
looking at the soldiers in the fight, they were indistinguishable between National Guard and active duty, right? Because of the like, and this is one thing that I really want people who are on active duty who hate on the Guard and hate on the reserve. This is one thing that I really want them to understand, that when it comes down to the actual fighting, like we're all there, we're all in like on the same side, one team, one fight, right? Like, and the way that we go about it, the human element behind the fight, it's still there, man. And I don't know. I get it. Like this is one reason why I fucking hate social media stuff. But like you see it on Facebook all the time. These dudes like sitting there blasting the Guard or reserve, whatever, because of this or that or whatever. Oh, these guys suck. Blah blah blah. I just want them to understand that like you clearly were never deployed with the National Guard, because when it comes down to the fighting in the city, everybody performs the same. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Like once the bullets start flying, it doesn't matter, you know.
It was
But
never any really like y'all put in work when it came down to put it in work, man. It was a lot of times we were just a couple streets over and we can hear it and we're like, man, they're out there fucking kicking ass right now. Hopefully they push them our way so we can get in with some of whatever they got. Because like I said, it happened a lot. There was often where like you guys got hit before us and I'm like, fuck, these guys are fucking cooking over here. And it for some of the guys, I've had people in certain squads who've never fired a shot the entire deployment. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
you guys are over there.
Well, I think with being in the last 20 years that we've been in combat, most of your guardsmen now have 2, 3, 4 deployments under their belt. And it was funny. I was talking to someone who was on active duty. They did a 3 or 4 year enlistment, and I was like, and they were like, oh well, you retired from the Guard and everything and everything. And I was like, yeah. I was like, just so you understand, you were in the Army for 4 years. I was deployed for 5.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I was deployed for 5 years, so in the Guard. So yeah, you were on active duty. I actually have more active duty time than you because of the deployment time, but yeah, but we do. We had a lot of guys. We had a lot of guys multiple deployments, and they weren't like support roles. These were combat. We had a lot of guys who were combat advisors when that was going on, just because of the skill sets we had. So it was, and at that time when we went, like it was brand new. That was unknown. Like what were these National Guards going to do? So it was a lot of unknowns. It was scary. It was really scary just because, active duty National Guard. And like I said, how are we going to be treated? And I have to say, I think we were treated as part of the team the whole time. I don't think there was ever a time where I felt like, I think we got better support from you than we did from our battalion and down in Orion, down south from us. We'd say we need something and we'd get it. We'd call our battalion. They'd be like, oh yeah, we can't make it up there or whatever. It was different. So I think as far as like the Iraqi deployment, I think the 126 was more of a family and more of a unit for us than the 218, to be honest.
yeah. I'm
Well,
glad
listen,
to
I
hear
can
that.
add to that. I
Go
can
ahead.
add to that because I joined the Army in the '80s, and the Guard was considered like a vacation. Like, oh, 2 weeks, so they're gonna go out and they're gonna camp like old Billy Boy or whatever. And there was always those stories that you heard, and then when I came over, it was like you know, I saw it firsthand. It was like, wow, what's going on? But then when Desert Storm happened and they started to try to deploy National Guard and they saw how much of a mess it was, that's when they decided to do that sister unit thing where they wanted to
Yeah, the
put
roundout
National
brigades.
Guard units with the active duty and get them trained up and get them back into where they're supposed to be. And that was the key right there of getting the units that actually got deployed, who were ready to get deployed, to be to the standard that they were at that time. So that was key and all that stuff, and that was great because I was part of that, and I loved it because, you know, we were doing all kinds of stuff. We were doing helicopter missions. I mean, they even wanted to deploy us down to do counter drug, and they did send units to do counter drug units missions. I mean, it was balls to the walls, man. Constant, you know, doing all kinds of missions that were coming up, and guys were volunteering for it. And then they saw that people were really into it, so then they started pouring more money into it, and that's the reason why we were that prepared at that time. So
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and I actually had never heard about the being paired up with an active duty unit.
Oh yeah, that was really across the board. That was all the way from East Coast to West Coast, where there were units that were being paired up with active duty units to get them trained up.
Right before 9/11, they were called roundout brigades. So we were a roundout brigade for 10th Mountain. So 10th Mountain, let's say they had 3 brigades, they'd have 2 actual active duty brigades, and there'd be a National Guard brigade, which had 10th Mountain patch. And we wore the 10th Mountain patch, and we would train a 4 drum. They would evaluate us, and we were there. If anything ever happened, we would be their 3rd or 4th brigade, whatever it was that they had at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually got put on alert for the Somalia mission when that stuff was going on, and we were actually up in Fort Drum, and they're like, "You guys start getting everything prepared," and we're like, "For what? You guys on alert for Somalia?" And we're like, "What?" I'm like, "Okay." We're going to Somalia, but then they ended up sending Triple Deuce, which was already there during the humanitarian mission, which was crazy. Which was like, oh wow. So, and everybody at that point kind of realized, okay, this is serious business. We got to get our stuff together. You know,
it's so much more stability going on our side compared to you guys by far.
Yeah.
By far.
Yeah, for us, so we were deployed to, so, you know, Tyree and I were in base training when 9/11 happened. We're like, oh shit, we're going to war. We get to Germany. I get there in October of 2001, and Tyree gets there in what, January of 2002. And in our minds, we're like, okay, we're going to war. Well, we actually went to Kosovo first for 6.5 months for a peacekeeping mission. We're like, wait a second, like 9/11 just happened, terrorist attacks on the United States soil, and we're going to Kosovo for peacekeeping. That doesn't make any sense. But I guess it was already we were already slotted, and there we went. So we come back, and we I think at the, you know, at least at the company level or battalion level or whichever, they knew that like upcoming we were going to Iraq, or that we were getting ready to deploy somewhere else. I think it was briefed to us that November of 2002 that, hey, like, you know, we're back from this deployment, but, you know, don't get comfortable. We're about to go again. And we got word that we were going to go into Iraq for OIF 1. We were supposed to come in through Turkey from the north. And so they took all of our household goods and, you know, hey, get ready, blah, blah, blah. We already had our Advon team there in Turkey. And then Turkey nixed the whole plan. We weren't allowed to, you know, come in from the north. So we got delayed a year. So we got all of our household goods back. They opened up, or they lifted the stop loss stop movement, a couple of guys, PCS, ETS, and then they shut it down again and said, hey, actually, so you're going to Iraq in 2004 for OIF 2. And we're like, okay. So they took all of our shit again. But like our op tempo for that year, I mean, we were training. I mean, obviously we were training all the time, but like we were going to the field at least once a month for anywhere from a weekend to a week and up to a month or a month and a half, just for train up. But it was spread out throughout the entire year. And in between in between going to the field, we were doing a lot of local guard. So there in Germany, we had where the families would stay off post, like the off post housing. So we would go out there and we would patrol that. So I guess that kind of counted as real world, but we didn't really treat it that way. I know I didn't. Like we were just kind of like walking around. And then, you know, but we had issued weapons, and I think we had ammo. I can't remember. Like it was one of those, yeah.
In case
but like, But I mean, we still knew that we were going to Iraq. We still knew, like this is when we're going. But like, it seems like for you guys, like it's just like, like going back to the early 90s, getting spun up to possibly go to the Gulf War, getting spun up to possibly go to Somalia. There's no telling. I mean, was there talk of sending y'all to the Balkans when all that stuff happened with Slobodan Milosevic?
Yeah, actually, yeah. I remember when I came back in, which was early 2002, after I finally got cleared by MEPS and everything. As soon as I got to the unit, I was handed a list that was they had said pick Iraq or Kosovo, and I was like, okay. So then when I looked at the list, Kosovo list was on the right and Iraq was in the left, and I saw that everybody was putting their name up for the Kosovo, so I just put my name for Iraq. I said, I know why you guys are doing it. You guys are all going to Iraq. And they all started going, Sarge, what's wrong with you? You're gonna jinx us, man. We're gonna go to Iraq. I said, guys, you just don't seem to understand. You don't know what's going on. You guys are just all brand new. I've been doing this for some time right now. We're going to Iraq. And I handed back I guess it was my first sergeant at the time. It was who handed it over to me, and I gave it to him. And he just nodded his head like agreeing with me. And I just kept on walking. And I think it was like maybe 4 or 5 months later, that's when I got the call. They're telling me, hey, look, I got the warning order telling me, actually, you guys are going to go and do this. And this is what's going to go on. And I think we went to Germany for something.
Ireland, Iceland.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm saying before the deployment, we went to I know I went to Holmesfeld and to do something there. I was there for a little bit and then came back. And then I think there was a warning order that came up from up high saying, hey, look, get ready because, we're going to gear up. And then next, I heard through the grapevine that they were calling people to go to various units and stuff. I think they had called up a whole bunch of lieutenants to go somewhere to active duty. I mean, there was just a whole bunch of stuff that was going on at the time. Some were probably rumors and some were probably true. But then I got the word that I was leaving from the 105th to go to the 108th. And I was like, oh, well, I guess it is. And, I was one of the first groups to go. And those individuals that I had spoken to before went on with the following forces for the OIF3. So, and that's pretty much how it went down.
Yeah, I think the original plan for the Guard when this all happened, because we were getting a lot of like be prepared missions, and I was a company commander for a different company then, but there was a lot of taking over peacekeeping missions for active duty so they could go into Iraq and they could go into, go into Afghanistan if things got worse. And so I think originally the Guard mission was going to be to take over the peacekeeping missions, and then I think once Iraq happened and we invaded Iraq, and they saw a need for, just to expand the whole, and put the Guard in those actual missions and not take them. And I think a lot of things for the Army too is the Army's hard to change. Once they get something set in stone, like that's where you're going, and it takes an act of Congress to stop your rotation. So they had units slotted, the money was already spent, everything was there, and they're like, well, now this unit has to go, so we got to fill them in. All we've got are Guard units, and then we're going to send Guard units. So maybe that's how it happened. I don't know, someone probably with a lot more rank knows than I do, but I would guess that would be it, just based off of warning orders we were getting.
Yeah, it was a little crazy because we were going back and forth. They were like, well, you're going to do this or you're going to do that. And there was too many uncertainties. And, 1 minute they're telling you, hey, get your stuff in order, get your wills, tell your family, blah, 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 blah. And then they say, oh, no, nothing's happening yet. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, oh, we're back up again, and so it was a little stressful. I got to say, it was a little stressful because you just didn't know. I just really wanted to just say, hey, look, just get it over with. Are we going or not?
Yeah.
And
well, and on top of that,
they gave us the word.
Well, and on top of that, like you guys, you are National Guardsmen, but you're primarily civilians. You have your civilian lives, your families, your jobs, all that stuff. So, I mean, that's a lot of shit to juggle. And then on top of that, you're like, hey, you're deploying, and now you're not. Well, now you're going over here. Well, no, wait, you're not going there. You're going here. So you guys finally got activated that October of 2003, right? Is that what it was? And so activation, and then that's when y'all like, okay, you rally up, you go off to JRTC, and and you do a bunch of training there. I mean, how like what was that? So activation in October, and then you guys get board the plane in February.
Yeah, so we had a big train up before actual activation. So I was placed on orders in April for the pre-mob, and probably a few hundred soldiers were put on orders just to get the unit ready. We had advances going out, but I want to say it was October 3rd was our actual date that we reported into the armories, and the buses brought a support drum. And then at that point, we started training. There was a lot of ranges. I would say in the beginning, there was a lot of ranges. There was a lot of stuff that, we were light infantry. We didn't have that many guys that were licensed to drive Humvee. So it was some Humvee licensing,
Yep.
just different vehicles. And then because we were guardsmen, we're like, well, I had guys, who were that weren't even infantry. They had transferred over from active duty, and they still weren't infantry. So we were sending them to the 2-week infantry courses so they could just become infantry during that time. And then there was some other schooling that had to go on that guys were doing. But I would say the first month or two, there was a lot of ranges and a lot of familiarization, getting new equipment. And then probably around November timeframe, we started doing like squad STXs and platoon STXs, and then going into company level operations. And I would say, and then we ended up hitting, we went to JRTC. It was like end of January, beginning of February, sometime maybe. I'd have to look and see what the dates were. But we had also done a JRTC rotation, a traditional JRTC rotation, right before our mobilization. So we actually had, within a 6-month period, we had 2 JRTC rotations.
That's a lot of time at JRTC.
Yeah, it's too much time at JRTC, but it's a good experience. JRTC, for what it is, like they say, it's always harder than war, but I think it opened our eyes, and maybe that first rotation we went to made things a little bit more real for us. So we took the training a little bit more serious when we hit Fort Drum. So yeah, it was different.
Did you guys get to go home after that second rotation of JRTC before y'all deployed, or y'all just like roll out from there?
Boy, I know. I got to go home to see my son because he was just born. He was born on February 10th. So I went and I saw him. I got to spend a day at home, and then I had to go back to Fort Drum. But we had some family days. We're all from New York, so they would allow us to have family days where families would come visit us in Fort Drum. And there were a few of those. We went home for Thanksgiving, and Christmas. So we at least got to go home for those holidays. And then that was pretty much it. I think after JRTC, no one went back home unless it was an emergency situation.
Yeah, nobody went back home that I know of.
Yeah.
They said you guys are getting ready to go.
Yeah.
That was it.
I think we had our block leave that December going into January, and then that was it for us. We deployed. So we like Tyree said earlier, so we had our company commander through 2003, and we got a new one the day we deployed. That's when we got Captain Rock. We had that formation at like 9 a.m. for the change of command, and then I think we got on the buses at like 1400 on the 13th or 14th. Took that over to where we fly out of, Tyree? Do you remember? Was it Rhein-Main or was it Ramstein?
Oh shit, man, I don't know. I couldn't care less at that point. I was so nervous.
Yeah.
Well, even though I know at that point we were only going to Kuwait, but I was nervous as hell, man.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because that actually reminded me of something. I remember sitting in the back of that bus leaving Leadwood Barracks there in Schweinfurt, sitting in the back of that bus thinking to myself, this is it, man. Like we're deploying. I'm on the bus. I have my gear. I have all my shit with me. We're going to fly over there, and we're going straight to war. That's what's happening. We're going to war. It's happening right now. And I remember thinking to myself, I felt like I'm ready for this. I felt like we've had enough training. I felt like you said earlier, Tyree, like been with these dudes for several years. I'm comfortable with them. I feel like I'm ready for this. Like, I don't know exactly what we're getting into, but we know it's war, and we've played war plenty of times up there at Area Mike, or down there in Graf and Hohenfels, or out in Wilflicken. I feel like I'm ready for this. do you do you guys feel like you guys had that same mentality? Like, do you guys, like, Alvin, do you feel like you guys going into this, like, as a sergeant leading a team, having been in the Army since the the 80s, you said, like, do you feel like you were going into this, like, do you remember to yourself, like, I'm ready to go do that, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to do this?
Honestly, man, I think I was living a dream, man, because the one thing I wanted to be as a kid, man, since I was a kid, was a soldier, man. I remember watching all these movies from World War II and Korea and stuff like that. And I was like, I want to do that when I grow up. But, nobody really understands it until you have to do it. And then it's like, oh, yeah, okay, I really don't want to be here. But yeah, I had that mentality that I was ready. But like I said, I was living the dream. I was, because I was, like I said before, I was out. I could have just stayed out and said, well, I did my time. I don't care. Let the young guys do it. Cause I was like 30 something years old at the time. I think it was like 32, something like that. Maybe 35. Can't even remember, to tell you the truth. But I was in my 30s, and I could have just said, nah, I'm staying out of this one. But, you know, like we always say, that oath never expires. So I said, you know what? I can't do that to my guys. And I got a funny story about that one, because when I left, a lot of those guys that I had under my wing, they were upset that I left, but I made a stupid promise, which is not really stupid, but I said to them, look, man, I promise you that if we go to war, you know, um, I'll come back. And I happened to run into those guys afterwards, after 9/11, and they were like, yo, you remember that promise you made to us? And I was like, no, I don't forget, bro. I don't forget. I'm coming back. And that, actually caught me when I was actually going to go see the recruiter, somebody that I knew from back in the days, who I was gonna actually ask him to get me back in. And as soon as they saw me, they're like, you don't remember what you said, right? I'm like, yeah, I got you. And I went in and I signed right back up again, and that was it. And and no regrets, as always. But yeah, when we were in there, we were ready to go. But again, there was a lot of unknowns on where we're going to, because I remember like the CO said, he told us just as we were in the airfield, and I could tell you, because everybody, I was standing there and we were all like stunned, like, we're going where? And I think somebody knew enough geographics about Iraq that they knew where Samara was. And they said, that's like in the middle of Iraq. That's like where the Sunni Triangle is. And we were like, what? And like I said, somebody, I don't remember who it was, but somebody,
I think we had the S2 with us.
Yeah, he was studying
Major
about
Dealey
Iraq.
was there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, somebody was studying about Iraq and all that type of stuff, and basically all the culture and all that type of stuff. And they told us exactly where we were going to, and that there were some hardcore people there, and it wasn't going to be a cakewalk. And we were like, everybody was just like quiet. But we said, you know what? Whatever. We're going to go do what we got to do. And that was it. But it was good that we knew where we were going, and that we knew what our mission was going to be. But there was basically that uncertainty about, okay, what's going to happen with the 126, but we had each other, so that's all that really mattered.
Yeah. What about you, George? Going into it, did you feel like, with all the training, with all your experience, the guys you were surrounded with, like, did you feel like you were ready, or like, was there like a hint of like nervousness? I mean, what was that like for you going into it?
Well, I think, being a company commander is a little bit different. It's a really big responsibility. You're responsible for every single person and everything that happens. So, that's kind of tough. I'd say, I knew we could do whatever job that was put in front of us. I knew we had the skill set. I know my average guy was like 24, 25, 26 years old. So, they'd all been there and done stuff. I had a lot of prior active duty. So I felt really confident about us doing the job. But it was difficult just knowing that we had no idea what kind of unit we were going into. And for me, it was twice. I mean, end of November, I come into this new company, and I really didn't know any of the guys. And to meet everyone and jump into that and then say, okay, well, not only am I brand new to you guys, it's not as new as Rock Travel was to your company, but just yeah, we're not going to be with our battalion, and we're going to be somewhere else, and it's not a nice area, to be, it's a shitty hole, and
Yeah.
so there was a lot, it was and we saw when I took over the company, there were a lot of issues that were going on, that we had to fix and basically make a team. And I think by the time we finished JRTC, and part of that hellish 9 days in Sugar Gordon there,
which we
I
won.
think it's yeah, yeah. Which I mean, it was, I say, Sugar Gordon, they were talking. The rest of the time, talking about, oh, we had like 7, 8 insurgents coming across us. And I remember one time we're in Sugar Gordon, and it's January, February, and down in Fort Polk, so there's no leaves on the trees. And Sugar Gordon's in this bowl, and I remember I'm sitting there and I'm looking, and I can see all these black uniform guys, squads of 3 or 4, and it must have been a call all over Fort Polk to send everyone to Sugar Gordon. We were fighting like 30, 40, 50 guys at a time there, and it was just like I was like, what is going on? But like I said, I think because of all that, like we really had a really good team going in. And I think that built a lot of trust with the junior guys and to the more senior guys. So I think everyone felt a little bit more confident than before then. But it was, there was, I think for anyone to say, yeah, they were really excited to go to Samara, I think I'd have to say they're full of shit. Knowing what we knew about Samara, no one was like,
Absolutely.
yeah, we want to go. It was like, what the hell why are we going here? So, that whole thing, it is scary. And it's just, but it is what it is. I mean, you gotta, like we didn't have a say in it. It's not like they'd say, oh no, sorry, I'm going to pass on this one, give it to someone else.
Yeah.
So it like, you can't do anything about it. You got to deal with it and keep going.
Yeah. I see. I don't, saying that, like, I don't remember when we left Germany. I don't remember knowing that we were going to end up in Samara. I think we got told that while we were in Kuwait, and still had no idea what Samara was. Right? We knew that I think they had mentioned during the brief that it was in the Sunni Triangle and it's a Shia town. So expect some heavy fighting, and you got that typical soldier Hua mentality where you're like, fucking, let's go, let's fucking fight, right? Like, we're gonna be in the shit. And for people that have never been in combat, that's that your whole job is to go to combat. You're excited about the prospect of being in combat. In retrospect, you're like, oh man, that's fucking rough. Nobody needs to be involved in this kind of stuff. But that is interesting that you say, like, well, you were JRTC and you feel like they called all 4 out there to come fight you guys, because that definitely I feel like primed you guys or prepared you guys for the type of heavy fighting that we would eventually see in Samara. Because I mean, there weren't many occasions during the bigger battles where their numbers were less than that, so I mean, from Easter to Baton Rouge, I mean, it was a large number of enemy forces going into all that stuff.
We knew we were going to Samara, man. From we got a briefing in the day room like maybe a week before we left.
Oh, we did?
And yeah, they said, hey, we're going to Samara, and I'm like, I gotta look this shit up. And they're like, yeah, Sunni Triangle and something like 150,000 people in the city or some shit like that. I don't know if they're close with the numbers, but it was enough to fucking make me piss my pants a little bit, because I'm like, if anything goes sideways, man, it's just us and then these National Guard folks and then who else? That's all I'm thinking. We're fucking
All you can think of
screwed.
is like Black Hawk Down.
Yeah, not just exactly. Not saying there was anything wrong with the National Guard folks. I'm like, man, it's just us for real. Like, this is the 19-year-old Tyree Brown was a 19, 20-year-old. Like I guess at that point, like, man, I was fucking terrified. It wasn't something that I was ready for. I was comfortable with the people that we were with. Cool. All right. Yeah. I love my brothers and all that kind of stuff. But still, this is like the complete unknown. I have no clue what's going on here. I know these people don't like us. I know that we're going to go over here and fight for sure. Remember we had that brief with the sergeant major who was like Louis Gossett Jr. is like, you guys are my dicks and all kind of crazy.
Oh,
weird shit.
that was in Kuwait, man. No.
That was-
That we were in Kuwait for that. So I don't know
Yeah.
who this guy was. I don't know if he was brigade. I think he was brigade sergeant major, but he had the entire formation out there, and he's like, you know what? What I look at when I look at this formation, I see a bunch of dicks, and we're all just like,
What the fuck?
all right, you know. And he's like, you know what that means? Dedicated infantry combat killers, and we're like, that okay, that's definitely an acronym I feel like you just made up, but cool. And he's like, so going forward, I want to see nothing but dicks, and we're like, come on, Sergeant Major, you can.
It's a good
That's
thing
why
he
I'm
didn't say that in
laughing
front of
because I knew
National Guard
exactly what he was saying.
Come on.
That's
Yeah.
funny, man. That's old. That's old as shit, man. For real.
So all that shit's going on. Like again, this is somebody who I've never seen before. We have a new company commander. We have Captain Ocasio who's gone now. Like we were so happy we got rid of him. I know I say we shouldn't talk ill about anyone, but that was one person I'm happy to see go. Like you guys don't know him, cool. It's great you don't. Because
Yeah, we understand. We understand. We
Well,
had the same kind of situation.
So I've thought about it over the years, and if you've seen Band of Brothers, I think I understand what was happening in 2003. I think I understand why Captain Ocasio was being the way he was being, and I think I understand why Sergeant Swaney, our platoon sergeant at the time, was being the way he was being, and I think why First Sergeant Salinas was being the way he was being, was because of, like, you look at those, like, that the first couple of episodes of Band of Brothers when Captain Sobel is just, you know, is this rust on your bayonet? I wouldn't take this rusty piece of shit to combat, and I won't take you to combat either. I had almost that speech verbatim when we did
Pass denied.
yeah.
Hey, I gotta step out for a minute just because my son's in basic training and he's calling right now.
Oh yeah, get after it.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. But we had a Class A address inspection, and I'm standing there, Mike, and I just got him back from the cleaners, got all my shit on there, and he pulls off a thread from where, like, the first ID patch was sewn on or something, and he was like, "What is this? You think you could take this? You think this is gonna pass some kind of bullshit inspection? I wouldn't take you to combat." It was this whole thing, and I was just like, "Okay, all right, bud." He you know, and I understand the sentiment behind. So he had to send a company formation, and unrolled a black body bag in front of the entire company formation, and was like, "Do you know what this is? This is a body bag. Look to your left and right. Some of you are coming home in this." And we were like, what the fuck? That's unnecessary, But I also kind of, looking back on, I can kind of understand, because having done the drill sergeant gig, trying to make the future seem more realistic when the future hasn't happened yet. It's untold.
Mm-hmm.
So you try to make things a little bit more realistic for people, and I think that's what he was attempting to do. With all that being said, Captain Rockefeller was definitely a fucking rock star, and we were happy to we didn't know him, right? We got him that morning, but looking at his uniform, I mean, he had deployed with Ranger Bat, I think, during Grenada as a 13 series.
Back?
Yeah, as an enlisted man. Yeah. So, like, this guy, this is Panama, Grenada, one of the two. But like, we were like, okay,
Panama.
Yeah, and this guy's like the real deal.
We can talk about it, but hey, that's a different story for another day.
But yeah, no, it was we were excited to get him, and but and going into that deployment, like, okay, all right, this is all new. And then I do know that, like, we were primed while we were in still in Germany. I remember being pulled up to that day room, and they would show us videos of the beheadings that were going on over there, and that was priming us to fill us with anger to go over there and fight aggressively and do all that. So, our train up and y'all's train up definitely seems a lot different. Like, I feel like you guys got a lot more specific training to where you were going, whereas we just kind of went out and did the same thing over and over and over. Like I said, running around the woods, setting up, tents and sleeping under the snow and all that stuff. So, but yeah, interesting time for
Well,
sure.
I think the whole thing was that we had all these different kind of people, because I just remember earlier, I wanted to interject with it, but we had a guy who worked for customs, and the guy was a linguist. So while we were doing all that stuff, the Humvee training and all that other kind of stuff, waiting for us to start doing the sticks and stuff like that, we were taking classes on Arabic. We got these little fancy schmancy books where we were learning basic Arabic, and how to greet and know what certain things mean, like weapon and so on and so forth. And we did that for a couple of weeks or so, and then we took the books and we just continued kind of like refreshing ourselves and trying to learn some of the words. And that helped out great out there, because some guys would be able to at least communicate. It would be, we still needed translators, of course, because it was just like greetings and asking basic questions. But of course, by the time we were almost toward the end of deployment, a lot of people forgot about that. But that was kind of cool to learn, because at least we learned something about what was going on over there.
Yeah.
So that was great training as well.
Yeah. See, and we didn't get any language training. I know going into Kosovo, they taught us how to say NATO, stop or I'll shoot, in two different languages, was it Serbian and Albanian. But I don't remember getting any of that kind of training in Arabic. Tyree, do you?
Yeah.
Very little. I do remember there was some kind of paperwork they gave us or some kind of book, but it was just enough to maybe kind of get by. But in my opinion, no way I was going to be able to say it in a proper way that anyone was going to understand. So I'm like, I'm not going to worry about trying to learn this right now. I'm probably going to, I have a year, like I got a year, I'll pick it up. Like we're going to go to Kuwait here. I'm going to probably practice a little bit before we get over there. So I thought I had my shit together at that point when it came down to it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I learned the numbers and how to say open your trunk.
Yeah. That's all I needed. That's all I thought I needed. I wasn't going to be ordering food there. I wasn't going to be doing anything other than like work. So like if it wasn't work related, I could care less. That was my thing for that year. I'm like, I'm going to be on fucking army time. Like that's all that matters right now. Anything that I learn is going to be army related. It's going to help out this deployment. It's going to help me get through this whole fucking bullshit. And that's that. I didn't really want to. I knew that the deployment was going to be bad enough, and I want to add any bad shit with it with my crap, if that makes any sense. So I just wanted really, I really wanted to stay focused on this. Like, I guess as the deployment went on, we kind of figured out ways to have fun in our own different way. But the beginning was straight. It was go time, man. I couldn't think of anything else I wanted to think about besides like what we need to train on. Let's think about that. Let's deal with that kind of stuff. And now thinking about it, like all these years later, like thank God we were like that, because like it could have been a lot worse. I think as bad as we say our deployment was, it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The guys who stayed in the unit after we came back the next year, they went to, where'd they go? Kevin, the guys from Charlie, how bad they got hit.
Well, they were up in if I'm not mistaken, I think Charlie was up in Tikrit. And I'm not really sure what Charlie went through. George, I think I accidentally muted you.
I'm back.
Yeah. But like you talk about like what our battalion went through like in the later deployment in 2006, like fuck, makes ours seem like nothing, I think. But I do think, I mean, I know we got a little bit of like cultural training before we went over there, but I think it was very minimal. Just kind of like customs and courtesies we're for Muslims or in Iraq or whatever. But I think that could have been a lot more. I think the language thing would have been extremely beneficial in a lot of situations, but like we've said before, we were going over there. We knew we were going to Iraq. I guess we all, at some point knew we were going to go to Samara, and we probably had an idea that it was going to be heavy fighting. But I think there were so many other unknowns or uncertainties, like how often we would be able to interact with people on a civil level, which was a lot more than I expected. I mean, just normal presence patrols, going door to door, talking to people, traffic control points, and actually being able to speak with these people through an interpreter, or very broken English and Arabic. There was a lot more of that than I expected. So I think having some kind of like a couple of weeks of like cultural training and maybe some like intro to the language or whatever would have been, I think, very beneficial. I think. I don't know.
I was in the reserves, just like everyone else. A little bit after I got out of regular army, and their training for when they got deployed, their language training and all that stuff was 10 times greater than anything we've ever gotten close to happen. And I felt pretty cool to be a part of that, because I'm like, man, I know how it's going to be. And I'm like, they didn't teach us enough, and they taught them too much. Like, these people couldn't hold full conversations before they even got off the bus. So I thought that was pretty cool that they, I guess, figured that out in the Army.
We used to teach that in basic training when I was down at Fort Sill. We had a guy who was a former interpreter over there, and was able to come to the States and work as a contractor. And he would come to all these basic training cycles, and they would have an 8-hour class on cultural awareness. And so he would teach them all kinds of stuff about the culture of Muslims in Iraq, Afghanistan, different words to say, all that stuff, and actually even like gave them materials to take back with them to go over. So, I mean, even in basic training, and that was back in 2009, they were getting at least introduced to it.
Well, that shows some kind of maturity or some kind of advancement in thought process over the time. Because to 9, that's a big chunk of years, and to be teaching them that at that point is a good thing. So
yeah. Well, and you got to think, like, the average deployment time after training back then was 2 months. So, yeah.
So I don't want to get bogged down too much on certain things. I don't have a lot more time on this show. What was it like when you guys actually hit the ground? When you guys actually landed in Iraq?
When I got there, we went to the what? You came with the Avon with us, right?
No, I did the convoy up. Yeah.
So I did the Avon, and basically when we got there, it was just basically left, right, seat, right, stuff like that, and get acclimated and find out what was going on. We had a big funny joke, I guess, on you guys, because I went to the MWR tent to go get to be on the phones and the computers, and I had some private that kept on gawking at me and wondering what was going on, because we had all this new gear and stuff. And he comes up to me, gets a parade rest, and he's like, "Excuse me, Sergeant, I just want to ask you a question." I'm like, "What's going on? Get it out your mouth." He's like, "Are you guys special forces?" Yeah, man, we're special forces, man. Just don't tell nobody. And then he walks away, and I think by the time the next morning, somebody comes into somebody in our group comes over and says, "Yo, do you really these guys think that we're special forces?" And I just started laughing, because that thing went like, it spread through the base like wildfire. So I saw the private the next day, and I told him, "Come over here." I said, "Listen, man, we're not special forces, man. We're National Guard for New York. Do me a favor. Don't be ever spreading rumors like that, man. All right, OPSEC, man. What's wrong with you?" And I told him, "Get out of here." He felt so embarrassed. So I was like, oh my God. But everybody in our group was just laughing, because like, "Yo, you really told him special forces?" I said, "Yeah, man," because he kept on wondering about our gear, because we had, the M68s and the lasers and all kinds of good stuff, man. And they were like bugging out, man. Like, didn't know, we had the new helmets, the new body armor, and they were just losing their mind, wondering who were we. And so I didn't say nothing else after that, and I just kept them moving.
Yeah, we had Molly gear. You guys saw the old LBEs.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And it was just great. It was great, though. It was great. you know. But we did what we were supposed to do to get them ready. So when they arrived, and of course the rest of your unit arrived, you know, we were ready to go. But they still came out and they put us on the. I'm not sure if you guys went through it, because maybe I think everybody did. They put us out in the different battle positions, you know, to get us acclimated to the weather and everything like that. And then eventually, I think it was weeks later that we started doing our first patrols in Samara and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
So
And
I think it was
doing
probably
QRF.
about once I got up there. So I came up with a ground convoy, and we drove up from Kuwait, and then once we hit Anaconda, we kept going north to Brasfield Mora. And I guess the statute of limitations is over on this story, but we were doing right seat rides, and it was I think it was a chain of command with a couple of vehicles, and this was the learning curve, I guess, between armor and mechanized and light infantry. You guys got hit with an IED. One of your tanks got hit and
Yeah.
blew
Oh,
off
yeah, I
one of the
remember
track
that.
wheels. And I guess your SOP at that point was you guys opened up like a 360. Well, you guys, which was
360,
okay
yeah.
for you guys, which was great for you guys because you were all in armored vehicles, but we were in Humvees, and I remember like one of our Humvees had like coax right across the windshield and and a bunch of that. We were like, oh man, we are not going to make it out of here. And but yeah,
I
that was
remember
that was our
mission.
first that was our first baptism. It was a like I said, I think statute of limitations is done, so it was a friendly fire incident when, yeah, you guys were just opening up because we got hit. It was, I think it was an IED and small arms fire, and you guys opened up all over, and we're like, oh,
And
we do
baptism
not
by
have
126
tanks.
fire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do not have tanks or armored vehicles.
So I
So-
Welcome to the 126.
Yeah,
yeah,
And
right.
I remember Rockefeller's like, if we can never talk about this again, that'd be great. And I was like,
Yeah.
all right.
So we've actually talked about that quite a bit on the show. So a tank, one of the Abrams that was attached to us, ran over a landmine, blew off the track and some roll wheels, and the headquarters platoon, they were in up armored Humvees. Well, actually, most of us were in up armored Humvees at this point because we weren't rolling around the Bradleys just yet. I think some of them were out, but the rear gun truck just starts firing indiscriminately to his 12 o'clock, which is the 6 o'clock to the vehicle, and just firing into darkness. So the Humvee that I was in at the time, I was at RTO for Lieutenant Gunther, and our truck took a couple of rounds. Your guys' truck took a couple rounds, but like to our flank was Tyree squad on foot.
Yeah.
They were out there
Oh.
on foot walking. And so what, y'all hit the ground
as best as we could, and then we were like, man, those traces are the wrong color. Something's weird. Something's not quite right.
Yeah, so here we are, active duty. You know what I mean? Like, we're better than the guard, and you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Well,
I
we
may have
can
said
laugh
that. I was
about
like,
it
well,
now.
at least we haven't shot at you guys yet, so yeah. can't really jump on us too much. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I do remember it's like at the end of the deployment when we were doing the right seat ride with the group that came in to replace us. I think it was a complete guard unit. They didn't have any active duty people, and I remember that was me and Sergeant Humphrey. We were walking across the open area, and we took an RPG. An RPG shot like well over our head, but in between where we got fired from and right behind us, we were right in the middle, was one of the National Guard Bradleys. And we're like, me and Humphrey laying on the ground, like, please don't fucking fire, please don't fucking fire, please don't fucking fire. You know,
Yeah.
like we still had that in our heads, like we're, you know, like these guys, I mean, they were new in country. You could tell they were new. I remember one guy got dismounted from the back of the Bradley, and he did not need to be on deployment. This boy was overweight. Like, I don't know how they found body armor that fit him. He comes stumbling out down that ramp with a saw. They gave him the saw of all things. I guess it'd be a, you know, as a joke. He comes down that ramp with the saw, already sweating, takes a couple steps, falls down, and ends up turtling himself. He had like to have two of his buddies come over and pick him up. I, you know, felt bad for him, but yeah, man, like that. Yeah, our first bit of combat, my first time to be shot at was definitely friendly fire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny.
So hey,
I think we're not all immune from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
all right, so for this episode, I'm going to cut this one a little short, only because I know we have so much more to tell, and I don't want to burn all of our stories quite yet. because I know you guys
No,
still
we
have
got stories.
heavy stuff to tell. I know we have a bunch more people, a lot more guests who are going to come on to tell about their side of the story with everything. And I'm so happy to have you guys a part of this. Hopefully, you guys will be back on whenever we need you because I'm like I'm saying, it's a year's worth of shows, and we're going to have some things that you guys are only you guys will be able to tell because we can't possibly tell anything about what happened with certain things and vice versa.
Hmm.
I'm very excited to have started this. I'm fucking pumped to have you guys here with me because again, we can't, me and Kevin just can't carry this on our own. I don't think we tried it once before, but this is going to be something that hopefully we'll be able to
Really look back on.
there you go. Really look back on it, put a nice bow on it, and put it away so we can move on to other bigger, better things in our history of military, whatever. But again, I'm very happy to have you guys on. You guys got anything before we cut this one out? I know it's kind of abrupt, but like I said, this is the only way we're going to be able to do this to preserve all the stories to make this go on for the
Yeah.
duration.
Oh, I got you. I'm glad to be a part of this. Finally, I mean, I know, like I said before, Kevin tried to get me on, but I'm glad to be a part of it. I guess it's great to finally tell our stories because I've heard a couple of the podcasts and stuff like that, but it's great for us to tell us our stories and our perspective. Because we do, like you said before, we do have a different perspective of what went down.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah,
So,
for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate all the time and everything that you guys are doing to keep this stuff, alive.
Hmm.
no problem, man. I sit at home and I watch YouTube videos of people from their Vietnam stories and their World War II stories, and I'm like, I haven't really seen anything about us in our time really solid yet. So I figured this was a great time to start it. 20
What
years later, whatever.
When I think one thing that always upsets me is like I follow a lot of these like social media accounts like on Instagram, whatever, and they talk about that Battle of Fallujah a lot. And don't get me wrong, I mean those dudes got hammered, they did, but I have never once seen anything on Baton Rouge or the shit that went down in Samara, and unless it's like something that one of our guys has put out on YouTube, and that's been out for 15, 20 years now, or however long. So, that's kind of, we feel like, our story is just as important, and we did some pretty wild stuff too. That sounds like I'm crying about it, but
No, we actually kicked it off, because that was the beginning of the fall offensive, and we kicked it off with the first battle. And then there
right.
was Fallujah, then there was Ramadi and everything else. But Fallujah just got the most of it because of it was such a great battle and all the craziness was going on. But they don't realize that all the ones that we were fighting in Samara took off and ran to Fallujah,
Yeah.
with them because they were mutually supporting each other.
Yeah.
They don't realize that.
Yeah. And my understanding was that Baton Rouge was like the guinea pig. We were the guinea pigs to see if that type of operation could work.
There were a lot of observers
Yeah.
watching how things happen. So.
Yeah. But yeah, so we'll definitely need you guys to come back on later on because, like Tyree said, I mean, there are so many events throughout that year that like we've already told our side of it with various people the first year that we did this, but we don't have your guys' perspective on a lot of things that went down that year. Like I said, from Easter Sunday to Baton Rouge to pulling out, so to everything, so. You guys were definitely a very important and pivotal part of our deployment, and we're definitely glad to have had you guys. I mean, I don't know if we could have had any other National Guard unit from any other state, and they would have performed just as well. But they weren't there, and we weren't lucky enough to have them. We were lucky enough to have you guys. So, yeah, fucking, you guys are definitely a part of the 126 family. That's for sure.
And vice
Appreciate
versa.
that.
I feel like wearing that patch every now and then. Now, y'all's patches was cool as shit.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I'm gonna cut this one out and close this out. Thanks, guys. Thank you for listening to Before I Forget, this special episode of Before I Forget, the 20th anniversary of OIF 2. Thank you. Please like, listen, share, subscribe, and watch. And give us a review because we can really use that. If you ever listen to us on any platform and you see a place where you can leave us a review, please do that. It'll help grow the platform. And Kevin, you got anything before we head out on the first episode of 12 on the Iraqi Freedom Remembrance or whatever the fuck you want to.
Yeah, we don't really have a title for it. No.
Yeah, we got to come up with something better than that.
I don't know. Do we? I don't know. No, I got nothing, man. Thanks for watching and keep watching.
Keep watching. Cool shit's coming.